Imagine a world where information travels at the speed of a letter, not a click. A world where news from another continent arrives days, sometimes weeks after the event. Where a phone call across the ocean is a luxury and libraries are the only gateways to knowledge beyond your immediate reach. It is the late 1950s. The world is divided by ideology, shadowed by the threat of nuclear war. The United States and the Soviet Union are locked in a race for technological supremacy. Computers exist, but they are the size of rooms, humming and clattering behind locked doors in government labs and universities. They are mysterious, almost magical machines, tended by a select priesthood of scientists and engineers. For most people, daily life is analog. Letters are written by hand, sealed with hope, and entrusted to the uncertain journey of the postal service. News is heard on the radio, seen in black and white on television, or read in the morning paper. Research is a slow, painstaking process, requiring hours spent among stacks of books and journals. Collaboration between scientists in different countries is a logistical challenge, often limited to conferences and the occasional phone call. Yet beneath the surface, something is stirring. In the minds of a few visionaries, a radical idea is taking shape. What if computers could talk to each other? What if information could flow freely, instantly, across any distance? What if the barriers of time and space could be broken, not by rockets or bombs, but by invisible threads of data? This is the story of how that idea became reality. It is a story of ambition and anxiety, of collaboration and rivalry, of brilliant minds and stubborn obstacles. It is the story of the internet, not just as a technology, but as a human adventure. Before the web, the world was vast and slow. Afterward, nothing would ever be the same. Long before the first computer beeped to life, before the hum of modems and the glow of screens, there were dreamers. They were writers, scientists, and philosophers, people who looked at the world not as it was, but as it could be. In the early 20th century, the world was changing at a dizzying pace. Electricity was lighting up cities. Radio waves were carrying voices across continents, and the first airplanes were stitching the sky with their contrails. The future felt limitless, and the boundaries of the possible seemed to recede with every new invention. Among the first to imagine a global network of information was a man named Paul Otlet, a Belgian bibliographer and visionary. In the 1930s, Otlet dreamed of a mechanical collective brain, a vast, interconnected library of all human knowledge, accessible to anyone, anywhere. He called it the Mundanium. In his vision, people would send questions by telegraph or telephone and receive answers from a central repository of information. Otlet's ideas were far ahead of his time, but they planted a seed, the dream of universal access to knowledge. At the same time, science fiction writers were spinning tales of future worlds where people could communicate instantly, no matter the distance. In 1945, American engineer and inventor Vannevar Bush published an essay called As We May Think. In it, he described a device called the Memex, a desk-sized machine that would allow users to store, retrieve, and link information at will. Bush's Memex was never built, but his vision of hyperlinked information would echo through the decades. The seeds of the internet were sown not just in the minds of visionaries, but in the laboratories of scientists. In the 1950s, computers were rare and expensive, used mainly for military calculations and scientific research. Each machine was an island, isolated from the others. Sharing information between computers was a slow manual process. Punch cards, magnetic tapes, and stacks of paper. But the dream persisted. In universities and research centers, young scientists began to ask, what if these machines could be connected? What if data could flow from one computer to another as easily as a phone call or a radio broadcast? One of these early dreamers was J.C.R. Licklider, a psychologist and computer scientist at MIT. Licklider believed that computers could become partners in human thought, amplifying our ability to solve problems and share ideas. In 1960, he wrote about a galactic network, a globally interconnected set of computers through which anyone could quickly access data and programs from any site. Licklider's vision was radical, but he was persuasive. He inspired a generation of researchers to think beyond the limits of their machines. Meanwhile, the world outside was growing more connected and more dangerous. The Cold War cast a long shadow, and the threat of nuclear conflict loomed over every scientific advance. Governments poured money into research, hoping to gain an edge in the technological arms race. In this climate of urgency and ambition, the dream of a global network began to take on a new practical importance. The first dreamers did not know exactly what they were building. They could not have imagined social media, streaming video, or the endless scroll of a modern smartphone, but they believed in something simple and profound. That knowledge should be shared, that people should be connected, and that technology could bring the world closer together. Their dreams would soon collide with reality in the form of wires, switches, and code. But before the first message ever traveled across a network, it existed as a dream, a vision of a world united by information. The year is 1961. The Cold War is at its iciest. The Berlin Wall is going up, and the world holds its breath during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The threat of nuclear annihilation hangs heavy in the air. In this atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, the United States Department of Defense is grappling with a terrifying question. How can the nation maintain communication and control in the event of a nuclear attack? Traditional communication systems, telephone lines, radio towers, are vulnerable. A single bomb could knock out entire networks, leaving the country deaf and blind. The Pentagon needs a system that is decentralized, resilient, and capable of surviving even the most catastrophic scenarios. Enter the Advanced Research Projects Agency, ARPA, a secretive branch of the Department of Defense created in 1958 in response to the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik. ARPA's mission is to fund and coordinate cutting-edge research in science and technology with the goal of maintaining America's technological superiority. In 1964, a Rand Corporation researcher named Paul Baran publishes a series of papers outlining a radical new approach to communication: packet switching. Instead of sending messages along a dedicated circuit, Baran proposes breaking them into small packets, each of which can travel independently through the network. If one path is blocked, the packets can find another route, ensuring that the message gets through. Baran's ideas are revolutionary, but they're also controversial. Many in the telecommunications industry are skeptical, arguing that packet switching is inefficient and unreliable. Meanwhile, in England, a computer scientist named Donald Davis independently develops a similar concept, which he also calls packet switching. Davies and his team at the National Physical Laboratory build a small experimental network to test their ideas. Back in the United States, J.C.R. Licklider, now at ARPA, is championing the idea of a galactic network of computers. He convinces ARPA director Charles Hertzfeld to fund a project to build a real-world version of this network. In 1966, ARPA issues a request for proposals to build what will become known as the ARPANET. The contract is awarded to Bolt, Beranek, and Newman, BBN, a small research firm in Cambridge, Massachusetts. A team led by engineer Frank Hart designs the interface message processors, IMPs, the computers that will serve as the nodes of the network. The IMPs are based on a ruggedized version of the Honeywell DDP-516 minicomputer. In 1969, the first 4 nodes of the ARPANET are connected: UCLA, the Stanford Research Institute, SRI, UC Santa Barbara, and the University of Utah. On October 29, 1969, a UCLA student named Charlie Klein attempts to send the word login to a computer at SRI. The system crashes after sending only the first 2 letters. Low. It's a humble beginning, but a historic one. A few hours later, they try again, and this time, the message gets through. The ARPANET is alive. The ARPANET is not yet the internet. It is a small experimental network used mainly by researchers and academics. But it is a proof of concept, a demonstration that packet switching can work, and that computers can communicate with each other across vast distances. The Cold War may have been the catalyst for the ARPANET, but the network's potential extends far beyond military applications. The dream of a global network of knowledge is taking shape, one packet at a time. Before the ARPANET, communication networks were like highways with dedicated lanes. When you made a phone call, a direct circuit was established between your phone and the person you were calling. This circuit remained open for the duration of the call, even if you weren't speaking. It was efficient for continuous streams of data like voice, but wasteful for intermittent bursts of information like computer data. Packet switching changed everything. Instead of a dedicated circuit, messages were broken down into small self-contained units called packets. Each packet contained a piece of the message, along with addressing information that allowed it to be routed independently through the network. Think of it like sending a letter. Instead of writing your entire message on one long scroll, you write it on individual postcards. Each postcard has the recipient's address on it, and the postal service can deliver each postcard along the best available route. Some postcards might take a different path than others, but they will all eventually arrive at the same destination, where they can be reassembled into the original message. The beauty of packet switching is its resilience. If one path is blocked or congested, packets can be rerouted around the problem. This makes the network much more robust than traditional circuit switch networks, which are vulnerable to single points of failure. Packet switching also allows for efficient use of network resources. Because packets are sent only when there is data to transmit, the network can handle multiple conversations simultaneously. This is like sharing a highway among many cars, each of which can travel at its own speed and choose its own route. The development of packet switching was not a straightforward process. There were many technical challenges to overcome, such as how to ensure that packets arrived in the correct order, how to detect and correct errors, and how to manage congestion. Paul Baran's work at the RAND Corporation was crucial in laying the theoretical foundations for packet switching. His papers describe the key principles of the technology, including the idea of breaking messages into packets, routing them independently, and reassembling them at the destination. Donald Davies' work at the National Physical Laboratory in England was equally important. Davies and his team built a small experimental network to demonstrate the feasibility of packet switching. They also coined the term packet switching, which has become the standard term for the technology. The ARPANET was the first large-scale implementation of packet switching. The interface message processors, IMPs, at each node of the network were responsible for breaking messages into packets, routing them to their destination, and reassembling them into the original message. Packet switching was a radical departure from the traditional way of thinking about communication networks. It was a key innovation that made the internet possible. Without packet switching, the internet would not be the resilient, efficient, and scalable network that it is today. By the early 1970s, the ARPANET was growing. More universities and research centers were joining the network, and the possibilities seemed endless. Yet, a new challenge was emerging. How could different types of networks, each with their own rules and technologies, communicate with one another? The dream of a truly global network required a universal language, a way for computers everywhere to understand each other, no matter what hardware or software they used. Enter Vinton Cerf and Kahn, two brilliant minds whose partnership would change the world. Kahn, an engineer with a deep understanding of computer networks, had been working on ARPANET since its earliest days. In 1972, he began to think about how to connect ARPANET with other emerging networks, such as satellite and radio-based systems. Each network had its own protocols, making direct communication impossible. What was needed was a method to bridge these differences, a protocol that could work across any network. Vinton Cerf, a computer scientist with a passion for communication theory, joined Kahn in this quest. Together, they began to design a new set of rules for how data should be packaged, addressed, transmitted, routed, and received. Their solution was elegant and powerful. The Transmission Control Protocol, TCP, and the Internet Protocol, IP, known together as TCP/IP. TCP/IP was revolutionary because it treated all networks as equals. It didn't matter if a message traveled over a phone line, a satellite link, or a radio wave. TCP/IP would break the message into packets, send them across any available route, and reassemble them at the destination. The protocols were designed to be robust, able to handle lost or out-of-order packets, and to recover from errors automatically. The development of TCP/IP was not without obstacles. Many experts doubted that such a universal protocol could work. There were technical challenges, political disagreements, and the ever-present pressure of the Cold War. But Cerf and Kahn were relentless. They organized meetings, wrote papers, and built prototypes. They listened to feedback from researchers around the world, refining their ideas with each iteration. In 1974, Cerf and Kahn published their landmark paper, A Protocol for Packet Network Intercommunication. It described the principles of TCP/IP and outlined how it could connect disparate networks into a single unified system, a true internet. The first real-world test of TCP/IP came in 1977 when 3 different networks, ARPANET, a packet radio network, and a satellite network, were successfully linked together. Data flowed seamlessly from one network to another, proving that Cerf and Kahn's vision was possible. By 1983, TCP/IP became the standard protocol for ARPANET. On January 1st of that year, known as Flag Day, every machine on the network switched over to TCP/IP. It was a momentous occasion, marking the birth of the modern internet. Vinton Cerf and Robert Kahn's work did more than solve a technical problem. It created a foundation for global communication, enabling people, ideas, and cultures to connect in ways never before imagined. Their vision of a network of networks, a true internet, was now a reality, but the story was far from over. The next challenge would be to make this powerful new tool accessible to everyone, everywhere. In the early days of the ARPANET, the internet was a code playground for a select few. Researchers, scientists, and engineers at universities and government labs. They were the pioneers, the first to explore this new digital frontier. They didn't have sleek interfaces, user-friendly software, or online help manuals. They had command lines, cryptic error messages, and a shared sense of adventure. Logging onto the ARPANET in the 1970s was not for the faint of heart. You needed a dedicated terminal, a modem, and a deep understanding of arcane commands. The network was slow, unreliable, and prone to crashing at any moment. But for those who persevered, the rewards were immense. One of the first applications of the ARPANET was electronic mail. Sending a message across the network was faster and more efficient than sending a letter through the postal service. Email quickly became a vital tool for collaboration, allowing researchers to share ideas, data, and code with colleagues around the world. Another popular application was file transfer. Researchers could use the ARPANET to access data and software stored on remote computers. This was particularly useful for sharing large datasets, such as weather models or scientific simulations. But the early internet was not just about work. It was also a place for experimentation, creativity, and even play. Users created online games, shared jokes, and engaged in lively discussions on mailing lists and bulletin boards. One of the most famous early applications was Telnet, which allowed users to log into remote computers and run programs as if they were sitting at the console. This opened up a world of possibilities, allowing researchers to access powerful computing resources from anywhere on the network. Of course, the early internet was not without its challenges. The network was often congested, and users had to contend with slow speeds and frequent outages. Security was also a concern, as the network was vulnerable to hackers and malicious software. One of the most memorable early errors was the Christmas tree exec incident in 1987. A poorly written program spread rapidly across the BitNet network, consuming resources and causing widespread disruption. The incident highlighted the importance of network security and the need for better software development practices. Despite the challenges, the early internet was a remarkable success. It demonstrated the power of packet switching, the versatility of TCP/IP, and the potential of global communication. It fostered a culture of collaboration, innovation, and open standards that continues to shape the internet today. The first users of the internet were not just consumers of technology, they were creators, innovators, and problem solvers. They built the tools, wrote the code, and shaped the culture of the internet. Their contributions laid the foundation for the world we live in today. As the internet grew, it attracted a new wave of users, hobbyists, entrepreneurs, and ordinary people who saw the potential of this new technology. The internet was no longer just a tool for researchers and scientists. It was becoming a platform for communication, commerce, and community. While the ARPANET was taking shape in the United States, similar efforts were underway in other parts of the world. Scientists and engineers in Europe and the Soviet Union were also exploring the possibilities of computer networking, often facing different challenges and pursuing different goals. In Europe, The focus was on building networks that could support scientific research and collaboration. The European Informatics Network, EIN, launched in the early 1970s, aimed to connect research centers across the continent. The EIN used packet switching technology, but it faced political and technical obstacles, including differing national standards and a lack of funding. In France, the Cyclades network, led by Louis Pouzin, was another pioneering effort in packet switching. Cyclades was designed to be a flexible and decentralized network, capable of supporting a wide range of applications. Pouzin's work on Cyclades influenced the development of TCP/IP and other internet protocols. In the United Kingdom, Donald Davies and his team at the National Physical Laboratory continued to develop packet switching technology. Davies' work was crucial in demonstrating the feasibility of packet switching and in promoting its adoption around the world. In the Soviet Union, the development of computer networks was driven by military and economic needs. The Unified System of Electronic Computers, ESEVM, was a series of mainframe computers designed to be compatible with IBM systems. The Soviets also developed their own network protocols, but these were often incompatible with Western standards. One of the most ambitious Soviet networking projects was the All-State Automated System for the Collection and Processing of Information, OGAS, proposed by Viktor Glushkov in the 1960s. OGAS was envisioned as a nationwide computer network that would manage the Soviet economy. The project was never fully realized due to political opposition and technical challenges. Despite the differences in approach and ideology, these parallel projects shared a common goal: to connect computers and enable communication. They contributed to the global understanding of networking technologies and paved the way for the Internet as we know it today. The exchange of ideas and technologies between the United States, Europe, and the Soviet Union was not always easy. The Cold War created barriers to communication and collaboration, but scientists and engineers on both sides of the Iron Curtain found ways to share their knowledge and expertise. The Internet is not just an American invention. It is the result of a global effort, a collaboration of minds from different cultures and backgrounds. The parallel projects in Europe and the Soviet Union demonstrate that the dream of a global network wasn't confined to one country or one ideology. It was a shared vision that transcended political boundaries. In the late 1980s, the internet was still largely a text-based world. It was a powerful tool for communication and collaboration, but it was not easy to use. Navigating the network required technical expertise, and accessing information often involved complex commands and arcane protocols. Enter Tim Berners-Lee, a British scientist working at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research in Switzerland. Berners-Lee had a vision, a way to make the internet more accessible, more intuitive, and more useful for everyone. Berners-Lee's idea was simple but revolutionary: to create a system of hyperlinked documents that could be accessed from anywhere on the internet. He called it the World Wide Web. The key components of the World Wide Web were Hypertext Markup Language, HTML, a language for creating web pages with text, images, and hyperlinks. Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP, a protocol for transferring web pages between servers and browsers. Uniform Resource Locator, URL, a system for addressing web pages and other resources on the internet. Web Browser, a software application for viewing web pages. Berners-Lee developed the first web browser, called World Wide Web, on a NeXT computer. He also created the first web server, which ran on the same machine. In 1991, Berners-Lee released the World Wide Web to the public. He made the code available for free with no patents or royalties. This decision was crucial to the rapid adoption of the web. The World Wide Web transformed the internet from a tool for specialists into a global platform for information and communication. Suddenly, anyone could create a web page and share their ideas, knowledge, and creativity with the world. The web browser made it easy to navigate the internet. Instead of typing complex commands, users could simply click on hyperlinks to jump from one page to another. The web browser also made it possible to view images, videos, and other multimedia content. The World Wide Web unleashed a wave of innovation. Entrepreneurs, artists, and educators flocked to the web. creating new businesses, new forms of art, and new ways of learning. The internet was no longer just a network of computers, it was becoming a network of people. Tim Berners-Lee's invention of the World Wide Web was a pivotal moment in the history of the internet. It made the internet accessible to everyone, and it paved the way for the digital revolution that has transformed our world. Berners-Lee's vision was not just about technology, it was also about freedom, openness, and collaboration. He believed that the internet should be a tool for empowering individuals and promoting understanding between cultures. His legacy continues to inspire the internet community today. The impact of the web on society. The arrival of the World Wide Web was more than a technical breakthrough. It was a social revolution. Almost overnight, the web began to reshape how people lived, worked, learned, and connected with one another. Access to information. For the first time in history, vast amounts of information became available to anyone with an internet connection. Encyclopedias, scientific papers, news articles, and personal stories were just a click away. The web democratized knowledge, breaking down barriers of geography, class, and privilege. Students in remote villages could access the same resources as those in the world's top universities. Lifelong learners found new opportunities to educate themselves, and experts could share their discoveries with a global audience. Communication and community. The web transformed communication. Email, forums, and chat rooms allowed people to connect instantly, regardless of distance. New communities formed around shared interests, hobbies, and causes. People who might have felt isolated in their local environment because of their beliefs, identities, or passions found support and friendship online. The web gave a voice to the voiceless, enabling grassroots movements and social change. Commerce and the economy. The web revolutionized business. Entrepreneurs launched online stores, artists sold their work directly to fans, and companies reached customers around the globe. E-commerce platforms like Amazon and eBay changed the way people bought and sold goods. The digital economy created new jobs and industries, from web design to online marketing, and allowed small businesses to compete with giants. Culture and creativity. The web became a canvas for creativity. Musicians, writers, filmmakers, and visual artists shared their work with the world, often bypassing traditional gatekeepers. Memes, viral videos, and blogs became new forms of cultural expression. The web blurred the lines between creator and audience, allowing anyone to participate in the making and sharing of culture, challenges, and controversies. Of course, the web also brought new challenges. The spread of misinformation, online harassment, and privacy concerns became pressing issues. The digital divide between those with access to the web and those without highlighted existing inequalities. As the web grew, questions about regulation, ethics, and the balance between freedom and responsibility became central to public debate. A connected world. Despite these challenges, the World Wide Web has made the world more connected than ever before. It has fostered understanding across borders, enabled collaboration on a global scale, and given billions of people the tools to learn, create, and share. Tim Berners-Lee's invention did not just change technology, it changed society. The web became a mirror of humanity, its hopes and fears, its creativity and conflicts, its endless curiosity and capacity for connection. Tim Berners-Lee's creation of the World Wide Web was a turning point, not only in the history of technology, but in the story of humanity itself. What began as a tool for scientists to share information quickly became a platform that touched every aspect of modern life. The web opened doors to knowledge, fostered new communities, and gave rise to innovations that continue to shape our world. Yet Berners-Lee's vision was always about more than just technology. He imagined the web as a space of openness, collaboration, and empowerment, a place where anyone, anywhere could contribute and connect. He insisted that the web remain free and accessible, refusing to patent his invention or restrict its use. This spirit of openness became the foundation for the explosive growth and creativity that followed. As the web spread across the globe, it became a reflection of humanity in all its complexity, a source of inspiration and opportunity, but also a stage for new challenges and dilemmas. The web story is still being written, shaped by the choices of billions of users, creators, and innovators. Looking back, it's clear that the World Wide Web did more than connect computers. It connected people. It turned the dream of a truly global community into a reality, forever changing how we learn, work, or relate to one another. And as we move forward into an ever more connected future, the legacy of Tim Berners-Lee and the first web pioneers reminds us that the greatest power of technology lies not in the machines themselves, but in the human connections they enable.